felt it would give us the best access to the strongest possible group of senior insurance decision makers.
Insurtech Insights is a must-do conference, I think, for the network that is built here.
Good morning, Insurtech. Yeah, so we'll have some fun. Everybody ready to day 2, right? First session. Well, this will be a little bit of a wake-up fun time. All right, is it okay, Lucy?
That sounds like a lot of fun.
All right, okay. So we're going to start by kind of, having a little bit of conversation around AI and the uncertainties around it. And what a simple way to think about the hype that's happening around AI. So, Lucy, if you look at this kind of ad that showed up in San Francisco, maybe about 3 months back, which is literally saying that we don't need humans anymore. And the company that did that was Artisan. They have a few artisans who can do the work of humans. So as you think about kind of the whole hype around AI and the relevancy of humans, would love to hear your thoughts about what do you think of that macro level human relevancy, and then also how at AXA are you thinking about AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, great to see all of you here this morning. I guess I don't buy into this premise. I'm fundamentally an optimist, and what I think is innate to what it means to be human is to be creative and to innovate. And so those are things that should only be amplified by having access to this technology. It should free us to have the time to think of new ideas, to implement them in new ways. And so, fundamentally, I think this is really up to us. If, as a human, we give away our own power and let the machine think for us, then sure, okay, fine. Then we don't need the humans anymore. But if we use the time that is given to us by having the machines do the grunt work of this, then all of a sudden we unleash a new potential. And so from my perspective, this is really in our hands to decide whether or not the human is going to be value added in the process. And I fundamentally believe that it is. And you asked about how we are then using this technology and thinking about what this means for AXA. And so just for orientation for those that don't know, I lead AXA XL's North America business. This is a commercial business, so commercial insurance across the US and Canada and Bermuda, all lines of business. So yes, obviously we are using AI, and we've been using AI for a long time. I mean, in many ways, insurance is the fundamental data science industry. And so we've been using AI for a while, and we're continuing to advance it to think about how we can be more efficient and effective, particularly with an emphasis on underwriting. Whether that's submission triage, whether that is being very clear about what risks we want to target, and thinking about how to make the underwriting process more effective and efficient. But what we're actually doing, and I think it's a more important use of our capacity and expertise, is really thinking about how can we support the economy as a whole in taking advantage of this new technology. I fundamentally believe that what commercial insurers do is underwrite the economy. And that means that our job is to help companies embrace risk, innovation, new opportunities, because that's what fuels the growth of the economy. And so right now, this is a particularly critical moment where we have insurance that probably from a silent cover perspective covers a fair number of risks that are starting to emerge from AI. You see them on the right-hand side here around data security, ethical issues around bias, regulatory and compliance challenges. And in many respects, a lot of the coverage that companies need is embedded in products that exist today, but it's not really affirmative cover. And that's, I think, ultimately a big problem, actually, for clients at the end of the day, because they do need to be able to understand what risks they are facing, and we together need to figure out how do we take down that total cost of risk.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I like this notion about underwriting the global risk, the underwriting the economy. I love that statement. And I think customer side of things, when you talk about customer side, it's really hard, right? It's, by the way, all of us are focused. I mean, when I work with so many different boards and so many different C-level teams across P&C, across life, across specialty, the entire focus of the world is around efficiency.
Yeah.
Right? And the focus is around how will we automate tasks, how can we be autonomous in things that we do. But customer tends to be hard because customers have different needs.
Yeah.
Right? They have different problems. Their attitudes are different. Their maturity levels are different. And how they think about the problem is different. So when you start talking about client-facing value, I think that's the true insurer. Because our job is to overall think about the economy and how do we reduce risk in the overall economy. So your point there, Lucy, I really, really like that. And I think when you think about customers, they think of AI in the context of what new risks do I have to deal with?
Yeah.
So I just went through the cybersecurity situation and finally getting a little bit of handle on it. And now the work that I do with AI, how will that create risk? Are those risks insurable or not insurable, right? You also think about, well, if I create IP, who owns the IP that gets created? And then there's also a fear on the customer side, and the fear is, will there be exclusions because of things that I did with AI, right? Will there be monitoring of my workforce? Will you deny me claims because you went through my maintenance records and said no to things that in the past I didn't have to worry about? So overall, I mean, I think the real issue is, are we effectively managing risk using AI, or are we avoiding risk and payments because of AI? So I think customer gets extremely complex.
Yeah, and your point around the fear factor of how will insurers use this information, it's intriguing to me because at the end of the day, I do think in some ways the easiest path for the average insurer is to issue exclusions. But then I don't think we're doing what we're meant to do to support companies. And so, it is ambiguous. We're not going to know what the true cost of risk is for these set of perils, both because the technology is moving so quickly, and also because the legal environment is still really nascent in thinking about, there's not enough legal precedent to know exactly how this is going to play out in different ways. And so, the challenge that I put forward to both my team and then to the clients is really this view around how can we essentially act as co-investors in your business. What is the best thing for me is not to be, gotcha and whammies and slapping people's risk. It is actually to work together with corporations to figure out how to understand, mitigate, manage, and ultimately take down the total cost of risk.
Yeah.
And so that requires working together to figure out what is the right set of insurance products to support those risks. And for example, we've launched an endorsement which is really around protecting companies who are training their own LLMs. And do we know exactly what the cost of goods sold is going to be for that? No, we don't. And so it's a risk on our side, which means that we're going to not be able to put out huge limits at the start, but we're willing to go along this journey where it is ambiguous for companies. And the ask in return is really an open dialogue about what companies are doing, how they're planning to use AI and generative AI, how they are thinking about and managing the risks. I think there's a huge parallel here to what happened about a decade ago with cyber insurance. At first, you had cyber insurance that was really embedded in a silent cover kind of way. And ultimately, there's been so much more conversation about sharing data on the defenses that are available, on the attack front, and understanding how to protect companies. And look, in the audience, I imagine there are tons of solutions out there that are trying to help companies adopt AI in responsible but innovative ways. And I would just say, from the seat I sit in, I very much applaud that. I mean, at my level, I'm in the adoption game of risk management capabilities. I want clients to be thoughtful about how they pursue new technologies and smart. And in many respects, I don't care whose risk identification and prevention solutions they use to dampen the total cost of risk. As a co-investor in their business, if I think about it that way, I'm all in. And so, it's a very interesting time to try to figure out how do we all navigate this very ambiguous territory.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting and fun at the same time.
Complexity is fun.
I love complexity.
Yes, insurance teams love it, complexity,
Yeah,
right?
we
We're
do.
designed for that, right?
We do.
But what I'll say is, this notion about overall creating economic benefit comes with the idea of reducing risk,
Yes.
right? And a 360 view of using the tools not just to insure risk, but also to manage risk, overall, is really a powerful one, right? And we need to think about that proactive part quite a bit.
I mean, you can't pick up a newspaper right now without having the sobering thought that the world is getting riskier every single day.
Absolutely.
So the fight is about managing down risk where we can.
Good.
And the great news is that we have new tools and the ability to access data in ways that we never did before to pursue that risk management in a smarter, more proactive way.
Absolutely.
There will always be, you could say that an insurance company should want the world to be risky because that's what we do, we transfer risk. But the way I think about it is that we have to do all we can to dampen down risk where we have a fighting chance of doing so, because with every passing day, new risks emerge, whether they're supply chain risks, whether they're AI risks, whether they're climate risks. And so we have to manage what we can manage with as much intensity as we can in order to protect the financial capacity to support companies in the more unknown areas.
Completely agree. I spend a lot of time with technology folks. I live in Silicon Valley. Obviously, there's a big hype. One of the things that we are thinking about in the question of, if you think about the notion of AI today, broadly speaking, if you start with the box, which box is about things that humans do today, right? And what's happening is the focus right now is around things humans will do
more efficiently.
How efficiently, how can we replace humans, how can we take tasks autonomously? But what we have not done just yet, it's starting to happen, is this notion of, and by the way, we are like very early, even in the second stage, but where things have not gone just yet, which is new things humans will do now that we have access to AI.
Yeah.
Some things that you were talking about go into a little bit of that notion of how will those emerging risks start to happen as we do new things.
It's emerging risk and emerging opportunity. I think back, the parallel that comes to mind here is John F. Kennedy and his bold aspiration of putting men on the moon.
Yes.
And that was something that we had never done before. It falls into that new category of new things humans will do. Yeah. And in this case, it's with technology, not with AI.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if we think about using our innovation, our creativity towards those new frontiers, how exciting is that? What could we do?
Absolutely. And I think this is where, in some ways, insurance companies may become a little bit more proactive.
Yeah.
Right? So I have an example here of a company called Stand Insurance. And what they have done is, if you look at California and the fires in California, which has become most properties, these are multi-million-dollar properties that cannot be insured anymore. So what they're doing is they're saying, okay, let me think about the problem differently. So they're using technology, first of all, to take your house and build a 3D kind of a digital twin for those, right? Mm-hmm. And then what they're doing is, once they have that image, they can model the thermal load around it, the combustible load which lives around your home, so they can see exactly what is causing the different issues that are going on around your house. And then what they do is they actually suggest what can you do to mitigate that risk. So they can, the idea here is not to decline insurance,
Make it affordable or make it insurable.
Make it insurable, right?
Yeah.
So it changes the whole outcome from the world is getting riskier. We cannot ignore the risk, but how can we get smarter about the risk so we can add value to the global economy, right? So it's that notion which is how do you recommend now? And this is the whole thinking around let's become proactive insurers and reduce the cost of risk versus reactive insurers, which is just insuring the risk as it stands today.
Yeah.
So big thing around that if you think about the world going forward.
You know, but that example, and if we move to the next slide, it requires, in that case, homeowners and an insurance company to partner together in a very different way than has been the historical way of interacting. And to me, that is really the key unlock that we're going to have to figure out, which is how do we operate in different ways? How do we get comfortable sharing information in ways that make the problem solvable, instead of being worried that the information that we share will be used at my own peril or in some ways to limit what I can do. And so, you know, this is I think the big challenge ahead of all of us, you know, in the economy. It's not just in the insurance space, but how do we use the information we have to solve the problems? We have no shortage of things that are getting to that uninsurable point. And that is a bit scary, but I really fundamentally believe that where we come in with a level of transparency, trust, solve it together, then you in fact can get to better solutions than have been available to date.
I mean, the cybersecurity is a great example of that data sharing, right? Because I'm part of a healthcare company, I'm board of it. We actually had a cyber event. You know, we are among the 2 largest events that happened last year and costed the company over $2 billion. It's public information. And what we realized was that in the beginning, you know, you're sitting in the board worried about going to FBI. But when we started talking to the FBI, the level of information sharing that happens, not just across US, but globally, right? Ultimately, that really helped us reduce the cost in terms of ransomware, reduce the cost in terms of how we operate, and the time it took us to get back our systems up and running again. So the collaboration point that you make here is actually quite.
I think cyber is a really great example because if you think about, there's information that the company has itself about what might be at stake. There's information that the technology companies have about the field of attack and the success or not success of different types of defenses. There's information that the government has about the patterns we're seeing in the threat actors. And there's information that the insurance company has about what is the economic cost of that to a company and what's the pattern recognition across. And so often I've seen this operate in such individual silos, and you think, you know, what is the potential to bring that together in a way that solves a problem in a way that we haven't been able to solve in the past. And you know, I think as our world becomes more digital, this data sharing point becomes really, really important.
Yep, I totally see that. I think as you also, you know, can see from our discussion here today, one of the things that has become quite transparent to us, that when we think about kind of AI, don't think of it as a technology problem. We are sitting at Insurtech, but technology in some ways is an enabler of big business, big thinking. So to me, AI is as much a business problem. It's also a risk issue. It's a societal issue. It's a human issue. So to me, it's thinking about AI as we go about in our industry implementing it. It's about thoughtfulness. It's about the outcomes. It's about pre-planning for this as the world emerges going forward.
You use the word issue. It's also an opportunity. And you know, I will be the unending optimist about this. But if we think about problems that we're really struggling to solve, how to think about and engage in climate change, how to think about social fragmentation that is happening around our world, you know, this is a new, powerful engine. That if we spend time thinking about how to point it in the right direction, I believe will improve the quality of life for for humans and the planet. And so we do have to be thoughtful around it, because you can just be led by it, right? It can just, if it stops us from thinking, if we use it as an excuse to sort of go on vacation in that way, it will be, I think, very risky to the world. But if we use it as an opportunity to become bionic, then it's really, really powerful.
I love the optimist in you. I love it. That's great.
Can't take it out of me.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. So Lucy, if you think about the next 5 years, 10 years, a little bit long-term thinking around this, what are the key thoughts you have there? What do you think is exciting? Where do you think are the fears? Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, I think I'll just build on what I said before in terms of excitement. I think we have the ability to harness data in a way that the compute power, the creative capabilities that come out of these tools, we have very real problems in this world. And so, this to me is an opportunity to solve some of those problems if we do so in the kind of multiple capability way. I also think it means that it's going to be incredibly imperative that we rethink education. Because at the end of the day, the skills that are going to be needed to be successful in the future, in some ways there are skills that we've always had, but that maybe we've underestimated or under-leveraged in the last few years around creativity and the like. There will also be a huge new set of skills around, prompt engineering and understanding where the limits of the technology are and all of this. And, our education systems, whether those are within school or within companies in terms of ongoing learning and development, aren't really geared to support either the pace or the nature of the skills that we need. So at AXA and AXA XL, we have really shifted our thinking about how we think about career development. And it's not so much going up a career ladder. I think of it as a career jungle gym. And what you want to do is to give people the menu of options of if you invested in your skills in this way, and this way, it would open up this pathway of opportunities. And so we are really shifting how we put that information in the hands of our colleagues and how we retool our learning and development to support that. But obviously that goes all the way back to what do you learn in 3rd grade? How do we teach kids in high school about when and how to use these tools in a way that augments what humans can do versus not? So I think that's a piece of work ahead of us. I don't think that's an insurmountable challenge, but we have to take it really seriously. I think the piece you asked about some fears, I am an optimist. I think this is technology. And if you think back to the Industrial Revolution or the like, we've always used new technologies to propel the world forward in general. But that doesn't come without dislocation in the meantime.
Absolutely.
And so I particularly worry about economies where they've built off of labor arbitrage around knowledge work. So you look at really large economies like India or the Philippines, and you think about all of the jobs that have been transferred to those economies. What happens if suddenly the demand for those hours, those man hours, is much less? What does that do? The standard of living has been going up in those countries. If we see a sudden shift, I worry in this day and age of sort of multipolar geopolitical natures, not global support, that we'll struggle to help those economies, and that will create some real political instability.
I think the contagion of that is also an issue, right? Because it starts with those economies, but then it floats into the entire global economy. As I think about the same question in the context of 5 and 10 years, I think there are 3 areas at least that to me come through quite clearly. Let me start with the education because you went there, right? So I think the first area is around adaptable education. So we as humans learn differently, as you know, right? So, I'm the kind of kid who, when I fail, I want to rise and pass, or do better. So for me, the AI will give me really tough problems in calculus, so I fail quite promptly. But there are kids who like to be actually, work their way into success, into a better path. So adaptable AI can now actually take that kid and give them gentler problems so they can work their confidence into that thinking. So there's this whole notion of how AI would know which question you could answer, what chapter could you learn, and then help you assist and learn in the question, in the context of your learning skills, your mindset. And could you do math right now, or could you do English right now? Let's figure out language versus that. So that's kind of
uber personalization. Where else do you see the opportunity for personalization?
So second thing I think on the personalization, which was actually going to be my second point, very good question on that, is around healthcare.
Yes.
So in healthcare, we are seeing this beginning of personalized healthcare, which is the notion that there is this molecule that's been created for my cancer at this time of, and the fact that my treatment is personal to me, my physiology, how I absorb different drugs, but also the notion that it will adapt as the cancer mutates. And that's a very significant work going on. I was talking to the CMO at Merck, and they have been blown away by the capability of new AI to think about molecules in that context.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
hyper-personalization.
And taking that back to our earlier part of the conversation, what about the preventative side of it?
Yes.
With understanding the genes that we've each individually inherited, developing the prevention and healthy roadmap that is for you versus for me. I mean, there's so much potential in
Absolutely.
that by being able to mine the amount of data that we have. I mean, you think about all sorts of things that medicines really haven't been tested, for example, around women as opposed to men.
Absolutely.
Can we go back and now use a set of data that we might actually have somewhere to truly understand what that means for different populations?
Completely agree. I mean, in the preventative side, I mean, that is called like the whole notion of pre-symptomatic diagnosis, which is that you don't have symptoms. The healthcare is today mostly post-symptomatic, the pre-symptomatic healthcare, and the idea is that you can actually discover cells that are going to become cancerous before they become cancer. So the possibilities there are quite immense if you think about the healthcare. And the third thing would be actually creativity, which is we are all creative in our own minds, and we were discussing this a little bit before. We don't have time or the skill set. So you have this idea for a movie or for this art that you want in your living room, but now you can imagine it and somebody will draw it for you, right? So the explosion of creativity, you can write a book because now you know how to write a book at your time, in your place. So the access to creativity, how humans can, take ideas that today they thought, but then they heard about 5 years later somebody implemented them, to say, I can implement it now, whether it be code, an app, or technology, or for that matter, creative arts. So I think there's a fundamental kind of huge value explosion of creativity because now we have a tool that can do that for us.
Yeah, that's really a very inspirational place to end. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. Any other closing thoughts before we open up for Q&A?
No. Let's see if there's anything out there that anyone wants to ask.
So
we can hardly see you, so you'll have to.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, don't be shy, guys. Okay, there's a question right there. Gentleman there.
Hi, thanks for the great panel. My name is Balázs, I'm from Europe. My question would be, where do you see the potential in insurance for back office workflow automation, particularly customer service, policy management, and claim operations? Thank you.
The answer is basically everywhere, right? I mean, it is for an industry that is as I said, the sort of original data science, industry. It is shocking how manual the processes are, how many times we touch information, and the risk for inaccuracy. And so, certainly I see, particularly from a generative AI perspective, that call centers and customer support is one of the places that is an obvious first step, to make agents able to, first to have some agentic agents, but then to make the human agents able to come up the learning curve much faster, access the information they need, solve problems faster and better. That's less relevant for me in the commercial insurance space because I don't run big call centers because we're not a consumer-facing organization. But the efficiency of how we do things like billing, how we issue certifications, how we process changes in the policy, how we absorb bordereaux. I mean, it's pretty much in every operational activity, there's an opportunity for reset. And then I'll also say, that's also true with like how we do finance and how we generate reports and how we program things in terms of our, our engineers that are coding new technology for us. I mean, I think that's the thing that's a little bit overwhelming about this technology, is that almost any activity that you think about, there's probably an application that is relevant for it. I think the challenge for us right now is doing a couple of things. It's picking places as an insurer where we can actually scale. Like, if you have 1,000 flowers blooming of little proof of concepts,
that's not good.
That's not actually that powerful at the end of the day. So the way I think about it is twofold. There's going to be certain sets of activities, namely around underwriting and around claims, that are secret sauce to what an insurer does. And so in that case, it's incredibly important that I have very close collaboration with third parties, or I build it myself so that I protect my proprietary data. And that's probably where I should be spending my energy as an insurer in innovating. I also strongly believe that we should be super users of technologies that others are developing, whether that's the marketing tools you were talking about earlier. If Anaplan puts things into their finance systems, or Salesforce puts things that with Einstein into their CRM, my mindset is, how can I be a super user of things that others have created, particularly in softwares that I'm already licensing?
That's great. I'll go a little bit kind of disruptive here, if I could. So I think there's a death of hard-coded workflows going forward. So your workflows, the real challenge that industry has had on the software side is anytime your workflow changes, software has to change quite dramatically. So you end up with 5 different policy admin systems and so on and so forth, and the root cause of the problem starts there. I think when we think about Gen AI, it'll emerge 5 years from now. Policy admin, the way we know it, is going to die. There's going to be a disruptive way to think about document first, not data first, but document-driven data first way of thinking about workflows, and workflows will be flexible and not hard-coded, because now the model intelligence can allow for that. So I would like, if you're an innovator thinking that way, I would start focusing, how would you build no structured database system if you could, and train your models to get there.
Yeah, maybe just to build on that slightly, I feel like the constant debate I have across, I sit on a global leadership team. I run the Americas, my peers run APAC and Europe and the UK and the reinsurance business. And the conversation we're always having with our head of technology and operations is standardization. And I think back to your point about personalization, what this might actually allow us to do is to maintain some of the complexity that actually serves customer needs.
Absolutely.
But also, you take the trade-off between efficiency and complexity, and you make it go away.
Absolutely.
And that's a pretty exciting unlock for insurance.
Absolutely, completely agree. I think we'll take one more question. I think we're out of time, but I think we can do one more.
I can't really tell.
Can't see. Going once. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
They're in the front. All right.
Can you hear me?
Oh,
sorry.
Oh, there's one
I
more.
already stole the mic. My question was around the who is doing things at your organization. So the AI is creating a new kind of collaboration challenge for us, where you need to get ground truth input from business users, and you need LLM ops type stuff from your data team, and then you've got an application team. Who at AXA is kind of wrangling all of the stakeholders in that process, and how are you managing that progressively to iterate and get it to scale?
Yeah. Well, the way we're approaching that, I don't think is groundbreaking, but it's really taking a journey-based view of innovation and change. And so, yes, you need a startup in a box. You need a cross-functional team to solve problems. And then those individuals need to be able to marshal broader sets of resources across their functional chapters or organizations. But I really believe it's working in Agile in an end-to-end journey kind of way with a cross-functional team. And that's how you bridge the gap of needing to have different expertise in the room in order to solve a problem in a smart way.
It's quick. I think we'll take one last, sorry, because you raised your hand, might as well. Give me the mic here, please.
In the front.
Okay, I think we're being told that we need to cut, so we're going to cut.
We'll come get you afterwards.
Sorry about that. You can ask us later on. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.